Okay, so everyone, hello. It's me, Gina from AetherFlows podcast. And with me today is an absolutely wonderful guest. Her name is Marcia K. Moore. She's an author, she's an artist. Or no, you're not an author, are you? Did you
I
author
know, kind
anything?
of a little bit. I mean, that's nice. Go ahead and
Okay.
go.
She's an author. She's an artist. She makes sculptures of Sasquatch and other beings out of tires, and she's done forensic recreations with elongated skulls from around the world. And she is a brilliant person. She was featured on the Flash of Beauty documentary, and if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you check that out. Anyway, here is Marcia.
Nice. Thank
All
you for the
right.
introduction. And it's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
such a pleasure to be here and talk with you, Gina. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I always ask myself, are you going to continue talking or is it something that you're not going to do? You know, it's like, because sometimes it just doesn't work out. And initially, we had to change it up a little bit, but being here and talking with you, thank you for letting me know that it's good to keep talking, to get to the finish line, because you have no idea. It's like it's that divine timing, number one, and then it's just it will form itself. And when it does, I'm just as shocked as anybody else. When I use my skills and my tools in reconstructing, and at the end, when there's a face on a skull, I am just as shocked as everybody else. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just what came through. And this is the information that I received. And I tell people this is an interpretation. Now, if I'm going from a little bit of, the anthropology report, I will do that and I can get an idea of where this person comes from or what, but mostly that spirit, that whatever you want to call it, is coming forth to give me information because I asked for this information. And so I'm forming it, and it's speaking to me and it's telling me as it comes forth. And I know that our mainstream forensic people do not operate like that. It's total science, which I respect as well. But there is that balance between, spirit and technology. I mean, that's why we're here. We have to have that balance, and we have to utilize that just as much as we utilize the hard fact stuff, let it flow. A lot of interpretations that I've seen that are done by mainstream are just so mechanical looking. They're just so not even human. I mean, it's clay, or it's 3D, but it doesn't have the essence of what needs to come through. It's just a ball of clay. So I think allowing it to form itself brings forth what needs to be, the face wants to come back. It wants to give you information. And I just allowed all of that to happen. I really did.
Oh, that is beautiful. Well, you're channeling. That's exactly what that is.
Absolutely.
You're allowing the spirit to come in and work through you. I wish I could remember the guy's name, but I saw a documentary a couple of years ago about this forensic artist, reconstructionist who worked with more with with crime and with missing persons and stuff like that. And that was exactly what he did. And his recreations were so spot on. And he openly said, he's like, I'm just channeling the person, like I can see their face and I'm just channeling their energy into the recreation. And I just thought that was so brilliant. So it sounds like you're doing exactly
That's exactly what artists do. I mean, when you're an artist, like I said, you've got your skills and you've got your tools, but if you're really honing in on the moment and not thinking the process away and making it very mechanical, at the end of the day, when you're creating, you'll just be as shocked as everybody else. You'll go, where did that come from? Like a writer does that all the time too. When they write a chapter or they write a book and then they go back and reread it and they're like, oh my gosh, I wrote this.
Came out of me. Yeah.
Exactly. It's all just coming through is what it is. And that's what I love. I love that. I ask for that and I'm around that every day. I just am like, well, let's see what's going to happen today. So
do you ever, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, you're never going to interrupt me. I can blah blah for a long time. I've noticed lately.
Oh, you're a very eloquent speaker, I must say. I saw your Flash of Beauty interview last night, and I was like, man, this lady. I feel like I don't even have to come up with any questions. Like you were so good at just laying it
Was
all
that
out.
the documentary, or I never watched the
Um,
interview? The full
oh
interview I
yeah, it
never
was.
watched.
Oh
Yeah.
really? They're
I don't like
incredible.
watching myself because that again happened, 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even a little longer. And I'm like, I don't
Different
want to
version,
revisit that because I don't think I'm the same version of that. And I
right?
might get completely irritated with myself. So, so I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and I'm glad that it
Oh, I
flowed. I
loved
hope
it.
it did anyway, because my
Yeah.
intention is always I hope I can get my message across because I don't think you said it sounds good. So I'm going to take your word for it. But,
Oh, it was wonderful.
okay, good, good. I feel like sometimes I have a hard time structuring the sentences in a way that people can maybe get it. And a lot of times when you're working on stuff, like when I'm working on the elongated skulls, you're not working on elongated skulls. I'm working on elongated skulls. I'm working on the giants. I'm reconstructing them. I'm like any kind of discipline that you hone into, I might be 10 years ahead of your thinking because I'm doing it. So every question that is being asked of me now was something I was thinking about 12 years ago. Perfect example is kind of Dolores Cannon. Do you know who she is?
Oh
Dolores
yeah,
Cannon?
absolutely.
Okay. Okay. So Dolores Cannon made mention that animals, specifically dogs, that they are with us because we are kind of helping them consciously expand to be more human-like. Well, science just talked about that like last week. I saw it all over social media. It's like, you see? And that was probably 12 years ago that she said that. But science had to catch up to even understanding the aspect of that. So that is what I mean about being, we're always just such different versions. I'm this person that's totally different now, the same but different. So it's I can go back there and I can talk about it, but sometimes it feels choppy because it's not flowing the same like when I was in it. It's more like I have to go, okay, now what did I do? Yeah, that kind of thing. So, but
Yeah.
you telling me that it sounds okay, then I'm okay.
Oh, I think I thought it was great. I
Okay.
just don't hear I don't hear a lot of people talking about things like forbidden archaeology or, um, elongated skulls or giants or the shining ones. I mean, I've heard a little bit from like Freddie Silva, and I've read some. I think his name's Michael Crema. He's another one, and a few others. But yeah, I just find it fascinating that you do these recreations. Where do you who do you work with? You were working with Brian Forrester at the time.
Well, initially this started out as I was in Florida. I was in Florida, and I had a studio, kind of a home studio, and kind of even entertainment. It was going to be. I was creating an ancient story, pre Spanish, of the Florida area, which included a lot of the indigenous, like 3,000 years ago, and the mound builders of Florida. So much information in Florida. It was kind of like the Tatooine, if you know Star Wars. It was like the Tatooine of North America, where it was a hub. So many people from all maritime sailors from all over the world ended up in Florida in certain different areas. And so I wanted to create this story. It was kind of an animation, at the time it was like maybe Lord of the Rings and all that's The Hobbit and all that was kind of coming out. And I had this idea with these characters, and I was learning 3D, and I was doing, it was like I was doing every aspect of an entertainment company or an animation company on my own. And my first character that I created had an elongated head. And I created that, and I was just like, okay. And it was one of my first 3D sculptures. Well, I found Brian I just found him through social media, and I noticed he'd been posting a lot about the elongated heads, the skulls. He was posting skull photos. And I showed him this first character. This was a character. It wasn't like, I was reconstructing one of these heads. But I showed him this and I said, I don't think your audience has ever seen a face that could possibly be a part of this elongated head. So I showed him the 3D, actually it was a 3D sculpture, and then the digital work. And he just was like, oh my gosh, and showed it to his audience. And from that point on, it just went worldwide. Because no one had ever even thought about a face on one of these skulls. Now, right or wrong, the way it was interpreted, it still was, it still gets that going up here where it's like, oh my gosh, is that a possibility? Or it gets someone to think about, the idea around it. So as that happened, then I just had to take some side trails from this animation I was working on. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to put this to the side, because I'm finding that the trails to the elongated heads, the trails to the mound builder giants, it's just information that is so important, I think, that I just need to hone in on this and help alternative researchers. And that's where it began. And it was about almost 12 years ago. I keep saying 12, so it must have been 12 years ago. And it just, it was just nonstop. I was reconstructing. I probably reconstructed, the first it was through photos. And Brian would send me photos, or other people would send me photos, and I would reconstruct the skulls in 3D, because you can kind of, get that going. And then it turned into people sending me resin copies of skulls. And I learned how to forensically reconstruct. And that became a whole nother essence. That was taking away the screen connection and then honing in on the really personal connection of touching somebody's skull and forming it. And that gave me more information. And then working with those that were really interested in our mound builders, our North American mound building complexes, the Ohio and Mississippi valleys, all throughout here.
Yeah.
And there was data that actually came from the Smithsonian Institution that, I don't know, it was old books. So it was like I had the skull data and I had a skeleton data. Now they weren't together, but I thought, well, it's enough to interpret. And I interpreted that in 3D. I interpreted a giant of male and female that were Adena, which is the Ohio, Mississippi Valley area, the mound builders.
Oh, yeah.
They were about 8 foot. And I reconstructed from the skull and the skeleton and came up with these giants. And then I learned about adorning them, and I put their regalia on them. And then I gave that to the world, and people really honed in on that, because, hey, this is right in our backyard. So much is right in our backyard.
Yeah, and it's so much. Well, it's literally fleshed out. Like you can make that connection. It's not just a pile of bones and a pile of information. It's something that you can look at and be like, wow, this really existed. So that's fascinating.
Well, and if there's an audience that is interested in it enough, then they can start doing their own research around it. Because like I said, everyone has their own perception, and everyone will find their own information and will perceive it in the way that they need to perceive it. And it's kind of like what I'm working on now. I don't know if you've known, I'm working on tires. I'm making these large tire sculptures.
Yes, I absolutely love them.
I'll talk about that later if you want. But I have to give you this information in that I created an 8-foot Bigfoot with bike tires. And he stands right in the front of my studio. Now, people will come into my studio and they will say, I've never seen a Bigfoot. And I'm like, yeah, you have. He's right out there. He's 8 foot tall. And that starts the process of, oh my gosh, what is this? Is it folklore? It just starts everybody's process of thinking. When I was out in Washington, people would say that too. Well, I've never seen a Bigfoot. I don't know if I believe in this. I'm like, there's Bigfoot coffee. Everything is Bigfoot out in the Pacific Northwest. So I'm like, it's subconsciously in there. You just you don't know what to do to open that door, or if you even want to. But then again, what you perceive is what you're going to receive, because, if you're going to take it on as a research and I'm going to slay the dragon type attitude, then I believe that's what you're going to get when you go out into the woods. And you don't have to go out into the woods. It's just that we as humans, we're so far removed that if we don't make the attempt of going into nature and expanding, then a lot of these things are not going to happen. It happens to you because you're expanded. Your heart is open, and they probably just walk in and out of your home all the time. It's just like, exactly. So it's like you don't have to do that. But I always tell people, if you're mindful of these living forests, they're living for us. If you go out there and you don't talk about your Walmart experience with everybody, and or you're gossiping or whatever you're doing, and you hone in on actually the relationship that you have with this forest. Oh, it's such a beautiful day, and I'm having a beautiful hike. And if you start expanding and start listening, well, so many things happen, and that door opens, and it's so amazing and magical when that happens, because it shifts the essence of being a human immediately. You start even asking the deeper questions. You're like, oh my gosh, there's more than just this road with cars and businesses and this 9 to 5 and this linear timeline that I was supposed to follow. And there's so much more to this. Oh my gosh, what's going on? So that's a part of the whole thing with this tire squatch.
Yeah.
Is the audience that I couldn't reach doing it through forensics or doing it through, kind of more of an anthropology way, more mainstream way, I guess. That was very limiting. It was like the audience, even global, was very small, because people were just like, people are either like you into it or they're not. But when you put an 8-foot bicycle tire squatch out in front, and people see that, they're like, oh my gosh. And you'll have an audience that will say, I've never seen one. Or you'll have the audience that comes to you and will look both ways and goes, do you believe in this? And I'm like, well, yeah, I do. And then they'll tell you their story that they filed away. And then they're like, yeah, I don't talk about this because it wasn't to be talked about when I was younger. Everyone just thought I was crazy. So, my lawn guy, he came up to me one day, a young man, and he was just like, do you believe in this? And I'm like, yes, I do. And he immediately told me about his experience. Now, see, that is what I want people to just flow and just go, come on, you've got these experiences. Let's just talk about them. Let's just, whatever it is, tell me about it. I'll listen to your story,
Right.
And, so that's the big aspect of why I've created Tire Squatch.
That's so cool. And I think it's just your craft, your art, the way that you construct these sculptures, because I've seen other ones too. You do a lot of like wildlife. I've seen like deer and bears and other creatures as well. It's so how did you even come up with that concept to use tires as a medium for sculpture? Because
I did not come up with the concept. I did not come up with that concept.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I was moving from Washington. I had spent 5 years in the Pacific Northwest, and I was just like, I think this story is done, and I need to move. I didn't want to move back to Florida, but I wanted to move to the mountains, and I had never been to North Carolina. So I just this place found me, and I've landed here. And a friend of mine who lives in Washington, he suggested this one day because he had been traveling and he had seen some artists from different countries create tire sculptures. And I poo-pooed it immediately. I was like, I'm in my 60s. I am not creating tire sculptures. Why would I do that? I was like, that's just too much. That's way too much for me. And I don't really even have an interest, to be honest with you. And then as I let things unfold, and as my place that I'm in found me, it's Pisgah Forest, North Carolina. This area is known for bikers. This is like the top 4 areas for bikers to come and have their adventures and blah, blah, blah. It's a real destination place. And as this formed, I was like, that's when the epiphany of the connection with the work that I had done to creating that and hitting it a larger audience hit me really strong. I was like, this could work. I mean, I'm not lacking ever in taking leaps of faith. I do that. I have reinvented myself about 1,000 times. So it's like, I can do that. I mean, I trust on big levels. So, so I said, okay, why not do this? And so the recipe of trying to understand how to do a big sculpture was doing these smaller animals. I'm like, how am I going to do this? So I worked on and I thought, well, I'll just hone in on North Carolina, all the animals that had been here historically, like buffalo and elk and deer and bears and the things that have been around for quite a while, or that are even being reintroduced. And then I'll create a larger audience through that. And then as they see the tire squatch, they'll start asking questions. And I'm telling you what, it has really worked. And it has helped me because I was honing so much into being on the computer. And physically, as I was aging, I'm like, you need to move. you need to start moving a little bit. And because I was a very active young person, very athletic and active, and I became very not. And I'm like, you need to get out into those forests again, and you need to rediscover yourself and get more physical with these sculptures. And that's exactly what I've done. So now I've created more of a balance, which has been really nice too. So
yeah. I mean, you need the balance. As you were speaking, I was kind of like visualizing the bear sculpture that I saw a while back. And it's just beautiful how you like incorporate even the tire treads as kind of the shape of how the fur flows, and just, you make it so realistic. It's just,
okay. So that's a perfect question to ask. Thank you for saying that, because that was the detail that I left out. So what is happening then through all of the bike tread, all those tires, is that I'm taking that 12 years of forensics and just applying it now with tires. And my friend suggested this. He was like, if you take a look at this, it's just like forensics. You're layering these tires in a way that builds up the anatomy of whatever you're creating. And I went, oh my gosh. And it works beautifully. It's a perfect medium for me right now. It just works really well. And, when I moved here, I had spent a year creating, and then I was going to have a open house. And then 2 weeks prior to my open house, we had a pretty horrific hurricane that went through here. And my studio got flooded and gutted. Wow. So that brought me down to my knees, to be honest with you. I was like, I don't think I have the energy to make this work. But now that I'm sitting here and I'm speaking with you, it is so much of what I would prefer. Initially it's like an old motel building. It is an old motel that I'm in. It's a living, working studio. And I rent the space. And so I told the landlord, he said, you want me to amp it up? Do you want me to change things? And I went, no, I do not want any distractions. I just want to do my work. I'll deal with it. And it was, a little disgusting, to be honest with you, but it allowed me to, if I want to get paint on the floor, or no big deal, or I sketched behind me. I have sketched my entire studio walls with black Sharpie.
Oh yeah.
So I wanted that. I wanted to just be in it 100%. I just wanted that around me all the time, because that's the best way to just be in tune with, what does channel through you. So when the hurricane hit, and believe me, a lot of people suffered and are still suffering through that. But I was so fortunate in that my landlord got in, and he got his crews in, and he changed it up to the point where this is a little bit more of what I would prefer now. Mm-hmm. I have new floors. I have new wall paint. There's so much that is happening with the interior that's a little bit more me. So I'm like, you see, it was a jump that I needed, and it turned out for the better. So
yeah,
I'm still doing it. So
that reminds me of a teaching that I learned from a friend of mine, where she was speaking about when you have these, I guess it kind of ties into the whole, like, you have to throw away your linear expectations of a project that you have, or of your own evolution. You kind of have to just loosen the grip, because when you're at a certain frequency, and you have this idea, this project that you want to accomplish, or, you know, a new business, a career, whatever, you kind of have to develop it from the inside out, because when you're at that same frequency, the outcome that you're envisioning isn't always in alignment for where the project is going to be or where you're going to be when it finally happens. So, you know, you kind of have to like do a lot of inner work and clear yourself out before you want to start your healing business. Because if you come out with a lot of like wounded motivations or a lot of shadow work that hasn't been done, that expression is going to be unbalanced. It's going to be janky. You're not going to get the type of clients that you prefer. You're not going to have the kind of experiences that are for your highest good. So that it makes sense to me that you had a project and you had this situation, but it kind of needed an upgrade, and it got one. So that's great.
You are spot on with that information, because that again was my learning, and thank you for repeating it, because I need it repeated almost daily. Because when, you know, we still play with ego, it's still like, oh yeah, this is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to go down. And one more time, I had to get kind of slapped in the face and like, no, this isn't how it's going to go down. So you better just hone in on just, you know, create that idea like we talked about earlier, and then let it go and let the universe just fill in the details. Because you get too caught up in that, boy, you'll get hit. You'll get hit hard. I've gotten hit several times. This is not the first time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Marcia, get it together.
Well, we have to give ourselves a lot of grace too, because we've been programmed from when, you know, before we were born, that that's the way the world works. You work in a linear fashion. You make a plan, you execute that plan, and if you do it correctly, then things will happen the way you want. And that's we're getting out of that. So we still, like you said, I have to remind myself of that all the time too, you know. Like,
all the time. Anything that comes out of my mouth to you is just coming right back at me, because it's all, and people say that, but it is true. It's just, I'm reminding myself constantly, because, you know, those old conditionings and all that junk, there's a lot. And when you don't think there's anything, there actually is. There's a lot. I discovered a lot, especially during the pandemic. I had to go through felt like a lot of clearing. And I still have to go through a lot of clearing. You know, there's always something that has to be, okay, let's take a look at this. What's going on here? Yeah. You know, just by exactly how you just described it, you know, so.
Right. Yeah. It's like working through the layers of an onion. Once you think you're like, oh, I'm great, everything's perfect, I can plateau out on my lotus flower for the rest of my life. It's like, nope, here's another layer. Here you go.
Exactly. It is. It's great. And it keeps it, that even, I was just talking to a friend yesterday. I was like, that even keeps you so interested in being here. You're just, you know, the more you understand this whole aspect of being on this planet and your story, you're just like, this is so intriguing. I mean, the moments, just being in the moment, it's just like, it's so intriguing, moment by moment by moment, instead of the conditioning linear aspect of, you know, is it Friday yet? Is it, you know, is it break time yet? You know,
right.
Those old conditionings when we would work. So, yeah.
Or
it's amazing. It's a magical and wonderful time to be a human on this planet. It really is. And you have to hone in, at least I do. I'm going to speak for myself. I stay in my own lane. I know what's going on out there, but I stay in my lane, and I'm just like, okay, well, this is the script happening here, but I'm going to stay in my lane and just open my heart and do the work that I need to do, knowing that that's going to help all these other lanes on some level by my individual expansion. So if everybody starts doing that, boy, the changes are going to be immense. I mean, a lot of people are already doing that, so it's wonderful.
Right. Yeah, I've kind of come to that same conclusion recently. In the past few years, I've kind of grappled with this feeling of, is it staying in my lane, or is it bypassing this experience out of a desire to not feel that anger and that fear that I feel when I look out at stuff that's happening that I don't prefer, things that I feel are wrong. But I've done a lot of soul searching, and I feel like that's the best way that I can manifest change within the collective and within myself, is to, like I said, work from the inside out, because everything is a reflection of your inner world. The exterior, that it's just a giant mirror. It's just a giant disco ball. And instead of getting wrapped up in the collective's fear and anger and strife and frustration with, like, gosh, everything could run so smoothly. Why is it like this? That's just resistance. That's all resistance. And it just
Exactly.
makes everything all clogged up and harder to flow. And so I decided that, like, getting out there and protesting isn't so much my jam, but mine is to work on myself and then watch that reflection change and turn into what I prefer, pretty much.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I would
and it's
agree with
taken a
that.
long time to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Because I grew up as a kid as, like, a little punk rocker wanting to protest everything, all of it, like,
Again, as a rebel.
yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. And that's been a big learning, is to, you can't just constantly look to the exterior and say everything's messed up, everything's screwed up. It's all them. None of it's me. It's like, you have to take personal responsibility and realize that that's how this universe works. Well, that's how Earth works, is we're all just bouncing off each other. We're all just a bunch of frequencies bouncing off each other. And when you're triggered by something, it's always because it's within you, like,
Yeah.
that conflict is within us. So yeah, it's been a really interesting 4 or 5 years for me.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I'm noticing, because I'm, like I said, I am in my 60s. Now that to me means a little bit generational wise. I came in and this was not anybody's topic, believe me. And so it was like you always felt so different that you didn't know how you were going to manage this life. You're like, I don't get this.
Yep.
I remember I asked all of the questions with my dad. My poor dad always had to answer the questions. It's like, well, who are we? I'm like 5 years old, and I'm like, well, who are we? And why are we here? I asked all those W questions. And he just gave me that version that everybody gets, or everybody did get. Well, this is what you do, and this is how it plays out, and this is blah, blah, blah. And then the part that got me the most, I think, was, and then you retire, and then you can have fun. And I went, that made no sense to me. I was like, wait a minute, you do this whole spiel, and then you retire, and then you can have fun, like you can go camping or do whatever, with the things that everyone would do. And I'm like, that's not going to work for me. I don't know how I'm going to play this game, but it's not going to work for me. And I think the biggest one was, what happens when we die? That was my biggest one as a young person. And that came in when you ask questions like that and you don't get an answer. Well, I am telling you what, you will get tapped until you do understand. Because I had a lot of experiences with death that were not the normal types experiences, not the natural death or they were always kind of extreme, very extreme. And I went through chapters of that. And that just added to the, oh my gosh, this is not working for me. I don't know how I'm going to play this game. And nobody even understands where you go after you die. I mean, this is what's going on. So, in essence, what the whole thing about death was then all those chapters. And then even I worked in, I have a minor in anthropology. So all of those chapters on death, a minor, all the studies of anthropology and honing in on our indigenous cultures, because I just related to that so well. And basically, because my dad said I was American, I said, well, who are we? Well, we're American. And I went, okay. So I said, well, then if I'm American, I'm gonna root to this North American continent. And who was here? Okay, well, the indigenous people were here. That's who I am. So I took all that information, and then I worked in dental. I created crown and bridge for the mouth. I took all that information. I took even the tools that you use and applied all of those chapters to the work that was forensic reconstruction, and honing in on reclaiming our lost history. So it took all that to understand and get to the point where this is why I asked all those questions. I had to know this information in order to get to this point where I am now. And thankfully, I trusted myself enough and grew enough with myself that I allowed it to happen. Otherwise, believe me, there's a lot of people who would not trust the process of being an artist on a day-to-day basis. It is a tough one. And you really have to trust that you can do this. You'll be okay. You have been okay. You can do this. But there are moments. But yeah, that was kind of the learning. And so, after I got to the point where I understood the process of death, because it came in very hard and furious. And when I finally understood that for myself, then it became easier. Oh, then transitioning became, someone's older, or maybe someone got a little sick and died, but it wasn't the horrific accidents or the horrific this or the that. And so it started to settle down because I stopped asking the question. I was just like, okay, I surrender. Let's just see how this unfolds, because I'm not getting it. And then I got it.
Yeah.
So
I feel like I had a very similar experience. I was very curious. I was so curious about death, and ghosts and Bigfoot and UFOs. And when I was really young, in school, I was always in the library in the paranormal section, reading all the Time Life paranormal books and the Reader's Digest collections of spooky stories and all that stuff. But I was so curious about it, and I had a lot of experiences when I was younger with different beings that would come and hang out with me at night while my parents were asleep. And I kind of just, I don't know. It almost just felt like it was kind of normal. And at some point, a lot of that stuff got shut down because of, family trauma and stuff like that. But at the time, it was just like, this felt so normal to me. And yeah, I was so curious about death, but my parents were just, they didn't want to talk about it. They didn't know what happened. They just told me, if you're good, you go to heaven. If you're not, you don't. And that was pretty much the end of it. And then, kind of like you said, in my teens and in my early 20s, I had a lot of experiences with people dying tragically or by their own hand, or, with drugs and alcohol. And it was so traumatic for me. These really good friends, because I had no idea where they went. I had a best friend who committed suicide, and it tormented me for years, because I thought maybe she's trapped in some astral realm, or or maybe she's a ghost. And it really, it was very big and dramatic for me at the time. But the more spiritual work that I've done, and the more that I've seen and experienced, now when someone passes, it's like the most natural thing in the world. And it's not this sort of like, oh, I'll never see you again. They're just on a different side of a very specific frequency. I feel they're right there. You don't have to go to a cemetery to talk to them, or to a psychic. You can just talk to them on your own. They can hear you.
Oh, absolutely. And we get validations of that all the time, if we're open to it. And it makes it so much, that's when they say you're never alone. You're not. You're never alone. There's always that with you. So, and if you hone into the little signs, you know, I mean, you know, and you're just like, okay, I could poo-poo this away right now, but I know better because this is a huge sign for me. This is exactly what that person would tell me or send me or show me or whatever it is. So yeah, it's that when you get that understanding, it still hurts. I mean, we're in this form it's still going to hurt us. But a friend of mine just passed away a couple of days ago, and I was just like, oh, and that still hurt me. But it was also like, you know, all right, that's cool.
I'll
It's like
I'll see you.
Yeah, we'll see you, and that was your story, and I know for a fact, you're either right here now, or you'll help me on some level if I ask, and yeah, we'll see each other. No big deal, but it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, you feel
light, but it is hard.
Right. No, you definitely feel the absence, and it is sad and hard, and it still takes a while to process. But at the same time, like my mom right now is kind of, she's pretty much, she's in transition at the time. She's in a facility, basically in hospice. And I feel like for her, especially with all the physical pain that's involved with this passing that she's going through, I'll be so happy for her to just be able to be free of her suffering, and that's about it. I'm just like, I love your story, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah. And that's exactly, I think the key word right there is when I realized, when my mother, she's my mom, but when I realized that she's got her own story, and she's a human with her own story, and I'm an aspect of it, but I'm not going to take on the aspects of that trauma and whatever it is. I'm not going to carry that on. So I had to look at her as, this is a human, another human, and I'm close to her, but I'll help her, but it's like this is her story, not my story. So that was a big process of healing for me. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can get sucked into the guilt and the shame and all the regrets, and you could get sucked into that, or you could realize that everything's a story and that some stories are not yours.
Yeah, and you can also take on, in the physical realm, we can take on that that looping of the cycle of trauma.
Yeah.
So let's say, for example, my dad told me, my dad died at 70, his dad. And I said, well, what did he die of? They were both farmers. I come from Iowa. They're both from big farm families. And he said, well, he just wore himself out from farming. And I went, okay. Well, you see, when you say something like that to a young person, then it's like, oh, that's what happens. You wear yourself out. Everyone has a different story there. But then when my dad reached 70, he heard that so many times. He told himself that so many times that he died at 70. So you don't want to take on the cycle of, that's why I had to say, this is my mother, but this is her human story. And I am not going to take on the essence of what she had to deal with through her trauma. I'm going to give you one story that I had to work through with death, and you'll understand how this trauma can carry on. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is me. I mean, especially, with the lineages of farm people, and to have people that are in their 70s and 80s and 90s nowadays do not look anything like the ones when I was growing up, when they were in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. They have a whole new essence about them. They're just like, they're still enjoying life. It's still working. It's wonderful. Where the ones from that particular time period, which we're not a part of, but yet it carries over, is like, they looked worn out. They did look, when they were 70, they looked old. really old.
Right.
Well, now I'm in my 60s, going to be approaching 70 at some point. I'm like, well, I don't think I'm not that generation. I'm not
Right.
even of that. And I always use frequency just for lack of a better word, because I don't know enough
Mhm.
about words, but the frequency of that time period is not where I am right now. I'm not there. That
Absolutely.
was that time. And
Yeah.
even time is probably not a good thing to say, because if everything is happening all at once, then it was just, it was just the essence of that. But where was I headed with this? Tell me, come on.
You were talking
I was
about
going to tell you
70-year-old.
okay. I was going to tell you about the story of the horrificness that happened to me during the time period that I asked about death all the time.
Mm.
This seems to be a topic that I talk about quite a bit, because I don't think people like to talk about death too much. And I'm like, I've always, and after the idea of it being normalized for myself, I was like, hey, this is great. At least I know the destination. Where I didn't know anything before, everyone put it on the back burner. But my mother's family, let's say there were 9 or 10 siblings, and her parents were gone already. But she had received a call that she was going to go to a funeral in Kansas of her mother's sister. So that would have, been an aunt. And she was invited to go by all the siblings. She decided last minute not to go, along with another sibling that lived in Colorado, and then another one that was a truck driver that couldn't make it either. But the rest of them went. That's a lot of siblings. So they're in a car on a country road in the middle of, in Kansas. Not a lot of humans on those country roads. And on the other side of the funeral procession is a hill, and a car comes down on the other side and slows down to look at the procession, because they're like, oh, what's going on? And a truck was behind that car and could not stop, and actually swerved and landed right on top of my mother's entire family. Killed all of them except one in a funeral procession. So
Wow.
that was all of the, I got to the point where I don't ask that question anymore, because you're going to get hit in spades with this, and just let this, you're going to go with the flow with this at some point. And I did. At some point I had to, because other things like that happened continuously, to the point where I was like, am I supposed to be an EMT? Am I supposed to be in medical? Something's happening here.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, that's a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
That's a lot of trauma. So, and that's just the beginning. I mean, I could go on for days with this one. So it's like, you have to release all of that and know that you are actually the one that's maybe ending that for the whole cycle of those relatives, that go way back. So I feel, in all honesty, that I am the aspect of that. I am like cleaning it up. Let's clean this up, because
absolutely.
Let's do this differently. And that makes me feel so good that I can utilize this life on this planet to do something like that. It's just amazing. It's amazing. Now that I'm talking to you, it's amazing. Maybe 20 years ago, that would not have been an amazing thought for me.
Yeah.
I would have been like,
Well,
right.
I feel like we are the disruptors, really. I feel like those of us that are conscious enough to change these patterns, to transmute this energy. I spend time every day transmuting ancestral energies from my bloodlines, because I can, and because I choose not to believe that my body will just wear out eventually, that I'll just work so hard that I'll just drop dead. Like, I refuse to believe that. But that energy is Midwestern, very Scandinavian, very stoic, very lone wolf, very like, I don't need to rely on anyone, hyper independence. All of these patterns are still, like, I was born with a lot of that. So it's when you make these conscious decisions to reach out for help if you need it, to not feel that you need to work until you're 65 in order to have fun. stuff like this, you are disrupting these ancestral patterns, and that's why we look different. That's why we feel different from our grandparents, because we're changing all the time, like you said.
Absolutely.
And
And you know, the
I'm
aspect
happy
of,
about it.
yeah, and the aspect of going through that hurricane that I went through was
Yeah.
another indication. Swallow your pride and receive help. There were so many people. This area, this cultural area, is phenomenal for graciousness and helping. And it was amazing to see the people, the mountain people, just helping everybody. And there were times, you know, that I would go through the line to receive something, you know, because of the you needed necessities. And I remember saying, you know, I've already been here one time. I hate to take any more. And one woman said, swallow your pride and take this. And I went, there you go. Her perfect example. It's like, it's okay. It's here for you to take. And it's helping. And it's like, you would do the same because you were taught to do the same. So it's like, it's that wonderful cycle of humans helping humans. So it was really a wonderful thing to observe and get, because it affected me as well. So
yeah. You know what I just realized is we haven't talked about Sasquatch almost this whole conversation.
I know. I can get on this topic, and I'm so sorry. Your audience.
Oh, not at all.
Oh my gosh, I can't do this.
No, this is great. We can talk about anything really, but
let's talk about Sasquatch. I can talk about Sasquatch.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, do you believe in Sasquatch?
Most definitely I do. And I will tell you that when I was younger, you had kind of that paranormal that happened to you, you know, in your home when you were younger. It came through dreams for me all the time, just dream time. So I had 3 tall, big shadow people that would come into my dream, and they were always around the house that I lived in, on Story Street in Story County. So it was like, okay, here's your story. And so the dream, they would always prompt something. They'd always prompt me to do something. I didn't know who they were. I know now, but I didn't know at the time. I'm like, oh my gosh, who are these guys? I'm little. I'm having this dream, but I'm in the dream. I mean, it is so happening for me that so these characters would come up to me and they'd want to tickle me. Well, what's any kid's worst nightmare is getting tickled. It's like, oh my God, please do not tickle me. But what it would do, and here's an example, would prompt me to learn something new during dream time. So one of the dreams was it prompted me to run to Story Street, which was, you know, across from my house. Went to Story Street and I started running down the street, and it was always a nighttime scene. I started running down the street, and then that prompted me to get a little bit more momentum, and then to jump, and then to have my first flight. And I was like, oh. And then I had this aerial view of the trees and my street and my house, and I was like, and when I woke up, I was just like, oh my gosh, that was amazing. And little did I know that, you know, they were big shadow people were always prompting me to learn something new in dream time. So that was the beginning. Let's put it that way. I always knew I was I was out in the woods all the time. I mean, those were the days where you didn't come in until mom called you in at, like, you know, if it's summer, 9 o'clock at night, you just were like, you're out there all day long. So I was out in the forest all day long. And I always had indications. I didn't understand what that was. I mean, but I always had indications of something's going on out here. I mean, there's more than me out here, and I don't understand it. And then I also lived through that time period where that first movie that came out about Bigfoot, you know, kind of the one what was the first one? Was it the late 60s or early 70s when that came out?
Oh, the Patterson film?
Yeah, the one that scares the shit out of you. You know, when you're a kid, you're like,
yes.
Okay, so I had that happen. And then it was just like, that was hard to shake because they made that so it was very unsure for me. It was just like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And why am I, as a young person, seeing this? And I don't think I can shake this. I did. I would always be out in the woods. I always enjoyed, that was my connection space. I just have an affinity for being out in nature. And so that's kind of how it got started. And then, of course, the whole life of conditioning kind of, it drops. It's just like, okay, got to work, got to do this, got to do that, this, that, and this and that. But then when I got to Florida and started, like I said, this kind of studio, and started kind of diving more into lost history and diving into the essence of other realms, then it came back. And then when I moved and went to the Pacific Northwest, then it was full force. It was just like, oh my gosh, here it is. And the 5 years that I spent in the Pacific Northwest, it was, I mean, I really kind of felt it was hard for me to leave because it was such a connection. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I hope this carries on, because I am just like, what I'm receiving was so supportive of everything that I did. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. And still is amazing. But now I just kind of, because I live like a half a mile from the entrance of the Pisgah National Forest. I'm surrounded by forests. I can be in this all the time. My studio is, people come in here and talk Bigfoot all the time, and they want to tell me their experiences, or they want to make sure that they're okay. And so Tire Squatch has also kind of turned into a little bit of this wellness center, where people come and they want to just be reassured. They want to know your story. I want to know their story. And so that's where I am right now with this. I don't have to go out into the woods. It's here and I can go out in the woods, but my every moment is surrounded by this. My every moment. So
yeah, you're like a counselor.
I guess
really
kind of the last thing I ever thought about. But I also had a friend. I mean, she's still living, but we don't see each other as much. But 10 years she was in my life almost daily, and she was an older woman, 84 years old, and she was a life coach. So can you imagine having a life coach in your life for 10 years and talking daily or seeing each other and talking out all kinds of stuff? And she could help me and process this as well. I mean, she might not have understood it, but she was like, well, let's dive into this a little bit. So I had that aspect of this, and I think I picked up her lingo along the way, because this is probably, an aspect of my friend. And and I am a storyteller. I love to tell stories, and I love to, I don't get a lot of human interaction sometimes, so I can sit here and talk story for a long time.
Well, I feel like she was there to help you acquire these tools to help others.
Absolutely.
Really,
Absolutely.
Like you're kind of like almost like an ambassador, I would say. Kind of. I feel like I kind of am too with this channel. That's part of the reason I started it, was to not make people more aware, but to help people to understand that there are other beings that we're living right alongside, and that we can foster friendships and come back together. Because I feel like there was a time when we lived right side by side together in harmony, and something happened and we lost that connection. And so it's a great opportunity for us to get to know ourselves and to get to know our interdimensional family. Really, a lot of people don't know about this. And so that's one of the reasons I have so many Sasquatch experiencers on the show, because it's so important. We have to reconnect.
I have a different aspect of telling my perspective with this, in that the more that I have learned about just observing people's behaviors around this, I've learned that more than not, those that are really seeking, really researching, and really wanting to get all that information have to be in it daily and make it their life. It's their life in a way that upsets the apple cart with every other aspect of their life. I have a feeling that, and mainly, and I don't like to generalize, but I see it more than in men than in women. Because with women, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen to women, it does, but with women, it's more of, they want to know when they go out in the forest specifically, they're just like, I'm having a great day. I'm loving the hike. And I just want to understand this a little more. I don't know anything about it, or how do I go about that? Where if it's a male, it's more like, and I'm generalizing here. It's that male energy of, I'm going to slay the dragon. And what the heck is going on out here? And we need to figure this out. And
yeah,
I'm starting to understand that when they're upsetting the apple cart with their own life in a physical realm here as a human, you need to remember humans are a mixed bag. Our genetics are, we're not Homo sapiens. I mean, release that one. We are so many things genetically. We have been so genetically manipulated. We are a mixed bag of a lot of genetics, including maybe something else. And I'm kind of, what I see and how I feel about this, and it really resonates with me, is when these men are doing this, they're trying to find their home. They're trying to find that connection because they don't have a home. They can't process this until the bitter end because they want to get back home. And I'm like, so is it that we are so manipulated genetically that maybe in our purest of form, as a species, in our purest of form, way back when, could we have been them? And we're just always trying to go home because we're trying to seek this out. Now, we're also many things. We come from the stars. We have this galactical thing going on. We have a lot of things going on. We're many things. But I think for the males that are struggling to find the expansion through the heart, because they're still using the brain, is that they're trying to go home. And the only way you get home is through the heart. So that's another thing that the elongated heads told me, is that, you have spent the last 12 years, Marcia, trying to understand why people emulated this head shape. Why were they doing this? Because it's seen on every continent. And bottom line, one of the last reconstructions that I ever did, I was just kind of honing in on kind of saying, okay, I think I've done enough of these. And it took me that long to go, humans do not need to expand through the head. They never have expanded. They don't need to expand through the head. They are not going to increase that cranial capacity to the point where they're connected. The only way that they connect expansively is through the heart. This is how humans expand. So until other people start expanding more through, they take this observation first and then apply it here. They're going to still keep in that loop of just, I need to slay the dragon. I need to find out what this is. What is this? Do I believe in it? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I need proof. And when you are expanded, I mean, in the beginning of this interview, remember, you got a little choked up. If you allow that to happen, that's what happens, because you have not, you're here in this heaviness. You're not that lightness that is needed to kind of enter that realm, so to speak. So when that heart does open up, it's like, oh my gosh, every emotion imaginable just starts pouring out, really starts pouring out. And so that's kind of I'm going to say that's my own interpretation, my own perspective. But I really feel like we're trying to get home to something always. And we need to really just have the experience of this and know that we're having a human experience, and that all of these experiences here, if we wrote the story to this, then we're supposed to be here and follow it through. Don't try to leave so quickly. Don't try to get out there in space real quickly. Don't try to, end this real quickly. You're here for the journey and the experiences of this. And just in every moment of it, just find it as magical as can be. Just go, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yes, exactly. Instead of trying to like you said, get out there with your guns and your trail cams and
All your
try to
equipment.
conquer. Yeah, trying to conquer
Yeah.
this mystery, or trying to, put a chip in your brain and go off to Mars, or, whatever it is. I think just some people have different ways of processing. And,
Yeah.
there are some of us that are all like, everything's internal, everything, you're, that's just how you internalize everything. Or others, they externalize everything. And that, I don't know if it's so, I mean, maybe there is a gender component to it, probably, but
Well,
at the
I think
same
it's
time,
energy. I'll say it's more energy related in the female
okay,
and male
yeah,
energy. There's a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
men and
There's the
women that have that
distorted,
wonderful balance there, but there's a lot that don't.
yeah, there's a lot of distortion. I'll
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the point. You get out there and you open your heart chakra and you play with the flowers and you play with your dog and you bring your guitar or your drums and you have fun in the woods. And that's what will open things up. I have a story that happened to me about something that happened to me last night, actually. I went out in my backyard. It's been really cloudy the past week. And last night was like the first really clear, beautiful night. I go out in my backyard and I was like, hey, Sasquatch buds, you want to come and play around with me? And I just kind of just hung out in the backyard a little bit and kind of, just got it. I was feeling kind of a little grumpy when I went outside, but I came outside. I started looking at the stars and looking at how beautiful the night was and looking at the trees and smelling uh, all the lilacs in my yard and listening to the pond and I kind of curated this feeling of um, gratefulness and joy. And I was just like, wow, it's so beautiful outside, and getting to that perfect temperature where you can sit outside at night and it's so comfortable and you're getting this like wonderful lilac smell, and it's just like the sound of the water and everything. I'm so grateful. I'm so abundant. I love my life right now. Everything is going so well and I'm so happy. And that's when I started seeing little sparks in the sky. And I saw a little gray orb shoot over my head, and I saw a couple playing in the trees. And I was like, oh, that's when you guys come out. When you have your heart open and when you feel that, you got to feel it. And that's when they're like, oh, okay, now we can connect. Because I feel like my frequency was maybe a little low when I came out there.
Yeah.
But it was just wonderful to it's so much easier for me these days to curate that sense of joy and abundance. Whereas before it was kind of, I don't know, it kind of felt like work. But now all I have to do is just kind of look around me and just kind of, it flows much better. And I feel like you kind of, I mean, you got to work on your heart chakra a bit. It takes a little bit of work, but once you get the hang of it, it's easier. And I feel like it makes your whole life so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then the humans that do come into your life, be a listener. Be a listener.
Yeah.
Let people, tell their story. And I'm finding that that's been an aspect of me more than not. I'm having to listen to people's stories, and that's great. I think that's a big part of what and where I'm being directed. So it's all good. It is all good.
Yeah.
Now, when I was
love
20,
it.
this is so far removed from anything I ever, but you see, I'm 20 different versions of myself at this moment in time. I'm like, I'm not even that person anymore. So can't relate to it.
I've done some interviews that, for one reason or another, I've had to keep, for like a month or so. And by the time I put them up on YouTube, I'm like, gosh, I feel like I'm not even that person anymore. Like I don't even recognize that.
Moving that quickly, isn't it?
Things are moving quick for sure.
Yeah. So you better get this up tomorrow because
I'm going to. Yep. I'm going to put it up on, I'll put it up on Friday.